We have a 15-inch jet planer. It can do a 15-inch wide board up to about a 6-inch thickness. It has the table moves up and down. It also has a segmented cutter in the top, a lot of little knives going across, spiral head. So the table moves up and down, the planer head just stays the same. So when you turn this crank, the table is going to move up and down for different thickness of board. There are locks on the table right here underneath this main dial here, and there's one on the other side in the back. Those need to be loosened up if you're going to adjust the height of the table. They really don't need to be tightened unless you're going for like a final pass. You want to make sure nothing changes. It should be fine as you plane the board to just leave those loose and just keep adjusting the height with this main control here. The planer also has 2 speeds, and so, but this thing has 3 positions. It has when it's in, when this knob is pushed in, it's going to push the wood through. The feed rolls, which push the wood through, are going to push it through at 20 feet per minute. And when it's out, it's going to go at 16. So it's going to go a little bit slower when the knob is pulled out. That will give you a little bit smoother finish on the board, but it goes a little bit slower. So if you're doing work where it doesn't matter so much, you can go with the faster feed rate. If you're trying to do a finish cut, you can go with the slower. The other thing to remember is there's a middle position, which is like neutral. So if the wood isn't feeding in properly, it's possible you're in the neutral position. So this thing is best adjusted when the machine is running. Sometimes it doesn't engage fully when it's shut off. So when it's on is the best time to make this adjustment. But I was just trying to show you right now how it works. You just want to make sure this thing is either in or out, not in the middle, so that this will feed in. The height, there is a gauge down underneath here that tells you what thickness this table is at. It's very hard to read. So you can try, there's a metric side, and the white side is metric, the black side is English measure. It's very hard to read. What I recommend is you just simply use a ruler to measure your board, and then to get your starting point, there's a center little block of piece of metal right in the middle here, and that is a safety thing to make sure that you don't take too heavy a cut. So if you crank up the table until it gets pinched by this block here, that's sort of a way to sort of get to your starting point. Then you go back down a little bit so that it moves easily. And that's where I would start pushing the wood through to thickness it. And then each pass, you're going to have to measure it and see how much more you have to go to get to your final thickness. This handle, I recommend that you use it either half a crank or 1 whole crank, but you don't go more than 1 whole crank at a time. So I normally go half a turn each time a pass when I'm planing the wood. There are little anti-kickback fingers inside here. They're little flippers that catch on the wood and prevent it from coming back out. And if you push this board in too far, those can engage and you won't be able to pull the board back. If you push those in and those engage, the only way to get your board out is to lower the thing down until they release, okay? So one of the things about a planer is that there can be bits of wood or a knot or some little bit of wood can be inside where the cutter is, can break off in planing and just be sitting in there. So you always want to make sure that there's nobody in the path back here when you're using the planer standing there, because it's possible that a knot, a hard chunk of wood could be caught by that knife and it will send it out like a bullet, shooting it backwards. So when you're operating the machine, you have to respect that too. So you're either on this side of the machine or you're around on this side of the machine. But I don't recommend you spend a lot of time standing straight onto the machine, because there could be particles in there that could fly out. One thing you can do is to look through before you start and turn the machine on, see that that's clear through there, just to make sure there isn't a piece of wood in there. So if you're going to, so I'm going to go till that makes a little contact, loosen it up a little bit. So I'm ready to make a pass. It's really, really important with a planer to make sure you open the gate. If you don't, there's a sign here that says open gate and start dust collector before turning the power on. You have about 10 seconds of using this machine with the dust not working before this pipe is going to plug up, okay? So it's really important that you get the gate open, you shut the gate of the previous machines. This produces the most chips of anything in the shop, and it's critical that you have the dust collection running, or this thing will plug up and it's no fun to get it unplugged. So it's really important that you open the gate and we'll turn on the dust. When you're pushing the board in, this sometimes needs a little nudge to get it engaged with the feed rolls. There's a feed roll on one side, the cutter head in the middle, another feed roll on the back side. When the board goes in, the first feed roll is holding it down, but when the cutter head hits it, it wants to lift the board up a little bit because it's a rotary cutter. It's going to want to like pick up the end a little bit. And it will do that until it gets past and into the second feed roll, and that will hold the piece down right where it needs to be. But sometimes if you have a long board, you're going to want to help this out a little bit, because if you just push it in and don't do anything, that cutter head will want to lift that front up and it will cut in. It's called snipe or bite on the front of the board. You can help it by giving a little bit of upward pressure on the board out on the end when it first starts in there until it gets to the far side of the machine. The same thing when it comes out the other side, you can give a little bit of upward pressure, because the same thing can happen on the tail end, that it'll bite a little bit too deep at the end once it gets past the first feed roll. Another thing about the planer is, and this is true with the joiner as well, the direction matters sometimes. The grain of the wood can be at a slope, and if the ends of the fibers are sort of on the upward slope as it goes in with the planer, and it's the other way around on the joiner, the knife can sort of catch those end fibers and fray it up a little bit and cause a little bit of what's called tear out. So when you push this board in, if you notice that it's sort of making a lot of little chips in it, you can try turning it around when you feed it in the second time, and you may get a better finish on the board. And the same thing true on the joiner. If you find it's chipping on the one direction, you can turn it around. Once you find that that's a good, working well, when you go to, if you want to do the other side, you flip it end for end and you'll get the same orientation. I don't know if you can see it or not, but in the joint, on the jointer, sometimes you get a little bit of irregularity on the board because you can't, when you push it through, it's hard to keep it down perfectly even all the way through. You need to have the jointed face down on the planer so that you're planing parallel to that jointed face. But once you get one side smooth, you flip it over and you can just clean up that second side and get all those machine marks off from the jointer. But we're going to start with the marked side, mark that I put on it, down, and we're going to feed it in this way. So we're going to have the gate open. I shut the gate from the previous machine. So I don't know if it showed on the video, but when I first tried to push the board in, it didn't go very good. And that was because I did exactly what I said, that the thing didn't engage. So it was in the neutral position. So I wasn't getting the board going in there. I was figuring out why is that happening. It's because I shifted this when it was off, which often it doesn't engage properly. So the gear shift was not in the low or high speed, it was in neutral. So when I went to try to push it in, nothing happened. I was trying to figure it out, and so it's important that you have it engaged.